Alright everyone, this video will go over Cartesian planes and ordered pairs and a basic introduction on how to graph an ordered pair. Alright, to start off, here's our Cartesian plane. If you look at just this section, the first quadrant, it is very similar to many of the graphs that we've been using for years. There's a positive scale over here and there's a positive scale over here. Where it starts to look different is you have three other quadrants as well. In this case, they're even labeled quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. What you'll notice that is different is on the left-hand side here, we start to go into negative numbers, and underneath we start to go into negative numbers as well. Imagine this as negative integers, where it could be a price that you have to pay, a debt that you may owe, or a very good example that I preferably like is a temperature. If the temperature is about 15 degrees, which it is right now, it would line up around here. If you get to minus 15 during the winter, it lines up along here. And I will be asking you at some point to graph a 0, and 0 will line up exactly in the middle. This is a question that comes up quite often, and some people will get tricked on. 0 is dead center in the middle. Another thing that you'll notice is the y-axis is up and down, and the x-axis is from side to side. Best way to remember this, and I'm going to pull out a marker here, is if you have your x and y-axes, I've labeled them here. A few tricks that you could use is you could think of a lot of very common words, like boxy. In this case, the x always goes before the y. Foxy. X goes before the y. You could think of other examples where the y comes first, but think back to grade 1 when you're learning these basic words. X always goes before the y. And another trick to remember which one is the x-axis and which one is the y-axis, and a student taught me this one. If you drew a y, but in this case you're going to draw it with an awkward staff, an awkward stick. This awkward stick or this awkward staff as part of the y can turn into an arrow. This arrow goes up and down. The y-axis goes up and down. So if this is the y-axis, by default, by process of elimination, this is the x-axis. Perfect, cool. So let's start to look at an actual ordered pair that we want to graph. So let's make this black for now, just to keep things organized and clean. Let's keep these positive numbers for now. So we have 5, and let's make this next one, let's make it 4. Let's keep it relatively small. Now, I always take my pencil, marker, highlighter, and I label the x and the y. That always makes my life a little bit easier. Now, my other hint is always label or find out where the x sits before on the x scale before you start to do what's on the y scale. So in this case, my example of this is you always go this way into the house first, so you're following the x-axis before you go upstairs. You can't go upstairs right away, you have to go into the house first. Another example is if you're in an office building, a hotel, might have multiple elevators. You have to choose your elevator first, so you're going to go from x and y. So you're going to go along the x-axis first, from side to side, before you could go up the elevator. Little tricks and hints. Okay, so we have our x value. Our x value is 5. I'm going to circle that value for now, and I'm going to say, yep, I know my x value. It is 5. I'm going to change the color. Now I'm going to hop over. I'm going to say, yep, let's look for this y value. So I'm going to go up the elevator this time. I'm going to look for 4. I circle 4. Perfect. So this is back to like in our multiplication table or anything like that. You climb the x until you get to the 4. You draw your dot. Most of the time, I will be asking you to label your point. So in that case, or in this case, you would write 5. Sorry for that bad handwriting. And 4. Sometimes what I do to make your life easier, I'm going to change colors again, is I might actually pre-label some coordinates, some ordered pairs. I might say A, B, C. In this case, A is going to be 5 and 4. Let's say B is going to be 1 And let's make it a negative this time. Let's make it a little bit more interesting. A -6. And finally we have, let's make it really tricky. 0 and 2. In this case, when I've given you labels like this, you can also take this point that we just laid down and label it like that instead of making a very messy graph. So I could actually come along and I could erase this point. So it's either you put the actual label itself by letters, or if you don't have that option, you might have to put the ordered pair. So we're going to erase that for now. Okay, so let's look at the next spots. I'm going to change the color again. Let's choose yellow this time. So B is going to be yellow. My hint is always label your X and Y first so you don't get them flipped, because that will be part of the trick that many people have to make sure they don't get tricked into. Let's look at this. So we're going to look at our X-axis first. We're going to find value 1. And then we're going to look at the Y-axis, and this is where we'll get tricky on this one. And we're going to look at the value -6. I get to plot my point. I'm going to label it B. Cool. Let's change colors one more time. This time let's go to, I like black. Let's stick to that. Now, this is where I'm kind of tricking you a little bit. Our X-axis, our X value, is going to be 0. So it does not get to move this way. It doesn't get to move this way. It lies straight flat right in the middle. And then our Y value is going to climb up and sit right there. Gonna make a big dot so it's nice and obvious. And that's our value C. Sometimes what we might actually end up doing is, let's add yet another color. I'm going to erase a few extra items here just so it's less confusing. We actually might ask you to draw a shape. So I'm going to choose a different color. So if I take this shape here, it's very difficult to draw it straight. There we go. And now we have a wonky triangle. There you go. So that's Cartesian plane. The Cartesian plane is the actual graph itself. The ordered pair is how we label the actual points on the graph. So the ordered pair is the pair of these two numbers. Now don't forget, X always comes first before Y. And our trick from before, to remember which one is the Y-axis and which one is the X-axis. The Y-axis has that awkward sort of arrow pointing straight up and down. So that is the straight up and down one. And the X is the other one. You don't need at this point to memorize which quadrant is which. It's just good information to know. Okay, so let me know if you have any questions. Enjoy.